Okay, we're just going to give folks a moment or two to jump on with us here. But welcome everyone. And I'm just going to give people a couple minutes to kind of log in and dial in and all that good stuff and connect to the live stream. So we are here with Jackie Clark, who is our breeding program manager and our puppy program co-manager, along with Heather Kidd, who is in our Calgary region. And Jackie is here with Sawyer, who is one of our newest recruits, who has the unusual distinction of hailing from Australia. So she came over along with Franny. So the two puppies kind of flew together. We're going to get into that in just a minute here. But maybe while we let people get online with us, Jackie, we can you just talk a little bit about what your role entails at PADS as a staff member, but then also talk about what your role is as it relates to the lovely Sawyer as a volunteer.
Certainly. So my role at PADS is twofold. As Tara mentioned, I'm co-manager on the puppy raising team. And so we have quite a big group of trainers who work in the puppy raising team across 3 regions. And so there are 2 of us to support them and to support our puppy raisers. And we oversee staff training and problem solving and distribution of puppies and that sort of thing. And then on the breeding side of things, I'm the one who's responsible for having the big picture of where we're going in the breeding program, and then determining how the pieces fit into place. So when dogs come into heat, are they getting bred that time? Who are they getting bred to? And then also doing our breeder selection of up-and-coming dogs to determine who gets to contribute their genes to the next generation of assistance dogs. And little Sawyer here is my volunteer project. So she is, I've lost count, but she is my newest, I'll say at least, puppy in training. And she, like many of our dogs, is a breeding prospect, and usually 90+% of our puppies are breeding prospects. And as they go through puppy raising, we whittle it down to a smaller pool. So that doesn't make her really unique. But it's just really important for us to continue to work with our puppies, see what we can offer the puppy raisers in terms of support. And yeah, so she's my little on the side project.
And you have volunteered with PADS in a variety of different ways. So you've been a breeder caretaker, a puppy raiser. And so we thought this was a really nice opportunity to kind of highlight. We've seen a lot of changes in our puppy raising program over the last few years. We've had a lot of learnings through COVID, but it would be a good opportunity to educate not just our volunteer community, but our followers as well around how we rear our puppies, because we have lovely access to you and to be able to kind of follow Sawyer through her training journey. But let's talk just for a second and welcome everyone who's joined in. Tell us in the comments where you're tuning in from. We're going to open things up to questions in a little bit, but I want Jackie to share how it is we came to get Sawyer, where she came from, and a little bit about that partnership, because that comes from her breeding manager hat a little bit, and kind of some of the partnerships we have. So go ahead, Jackie.
So within the assistance dog industry, there tends to be a shortage of puppies, especially for the smaller scale schools, a shortage of purpose-bred puppies. So to fill that need, in Australia, there's an organization called Career Dogs Australia, and they breed about 160 service dog quality puppies a year that are placed with schools worldwide. And one of their foundation dogs, a lovely black lab named Asta, she actually originated at PADS. She was from our Buffett and Santini litter. Oh, I want to say Buffett's 12 now. So probably, sorry, Buffett's 13 now. So probably 12-ish years ago. And a lot of their breeding program has been built on that. And so schools around the world have asked great grandkids. And the challenge is always to maintain enough genetic diversity. And so if you are operating on a fairly small pool of breeders, the chance for health problems and stuff to crop up is quite high, because we inherit one copy of a gene from our mom, one copy from our dad. The fewer dogs there are in the breeding program, the more chance there is that if one of our genes is a bad copy, that we also inherit a second bad copy, and that's where problems can crop up. So maintaining enough dogs in a breeding population so that we have far more good genes for everything circulating than bad genes acts as a buffer against genetic disease and health conditions. So we want to keep genetic diversity going. And so Career Dogs Australia approached us and said, you know, Asta's been so successful and her legacy's been so transformative worldwide. Would you consider doing something with us again? And the challenge with import-export to Australia is that puppies can come out of Australia without problem. Puppies cannot go into Australia. And the reason puppies cannot go into Australia is because Australia is considered a rabies-clean country. They don't have rabies. And so they don't want the risk of bringing rabies in. So it's quite a lengthy process to get a dog medically cleared for export to Australia. So for us to send a dog to Career Dogs Australia, we have to grow a dog out to adulthood, get them through their health tests, and send an adult dog. And so what we've arranged is that PADS will receive 6 breeding quality puppies from Career Dogs Australia, and Career Dogs Australia will receive a cleared female breeding dog from PADS. And so we both win, and the wider industry wins, because for our puppy that goes down there, or for our dog that goes down there, she'll be contributing her genes to help many schools across the globe. And likewise for the puppies that come here through our work with Assistance Dogs International and our other partnerships, they'll also be kind of paying that genetic diversity forward into the greater assistance dog population.
So we have a question already. So if Sawyer is selected for the breeding program down the road, is she more likely to pass on her lovely brindle coloring because she expresses them than a black or a yellow that just carry them?
So yes, it's a yes, and it would depend on what she's bred to. So if the dog that she's bred to doesn't carry the genes for brindle, then their offspring would not express brindle. They would just be carriers. But if she was bred to a dog that carried brindle, then we would expect a higher proportion of those puppies to have brindle markings than if we just mated 2 carriers together.
Oh, hang on, so Lori's asking, how many puppies does PADS have in a typical year? And how many of those do we send to other organizations?
So we generally have just shy of 100 puppies a year. Of course, with COVID, the past 2 years, that really altered things, and we had only about 75 puppies a year. And within that, how many puppies do we send to other organizations? I'd say we probably send 20 to other organizations, and that we receive the equivalent amount back. So we usually consider the puppies we send out versus puppies back in to be neutral, because we get puppies back in from the breeding cooperative, from stud fees, and also just from donations from other organizations. So probably up to 20 puppies a year would leave PADS.
Yeah. So I want to talk for a second about how Sawyer got here, because there's the practical. We've had a few people ask already about how, because I know we used a company to get the puppies here safely and ensure they were well cared for in that very long journey. But then also I want to talk about a very special member of our community that helped make that happen. So do you want to tell us a little bit about both those things?
I do. So as I mentioned, the donation of the puppies was covered. Of course, their transportation was not, and is quite a costly endeavor. The nice thing is transporting puppies, 2 can travel in 1 kennel together. And so you get 2 for the price of 1 in terms of shipping, as well as the benefits of them having companionship throughout that long journey. But I really want to recognize Jane O'Connor, who's she's currently a breeder caretaker. She's been a puppy raiser in the past, and she had come forward with quite a generous donation last fall for the breeding program and asked us what we wanted to spend it on. And we said we would really like to allocate it towards the transport of 4 of these 6 puppies from Career Dogs Australia. So everything we do at PADS, we can't do without our donors and volunteers. And certainly this is no exception. It's been a lot thanks to Jane that these puppies are here today.
Yeah. And so Jane actually got to name Sawyer's travel mate. I keep wanting to say sister, but they're not actually litter mates. So Jane named Franny in honor of her dog Finnegan Francis. So that was a very special connect for our community as well. And so with that journey, so the puppies do travel cargo, but we use a company that kind of monitors them every step of the way. So obviously on the flights, they're flying in a crate, but when they land and actually when they arrived here in Vancouver, there was some kind of delays with kind of getting them through customs, et cetera, but we're very grateful for working with a pet or an animal transport company that we knew that even though we couldn't get those puppies until the next day, there was somebody there caring for them and making sure they were getting let out of their crates, they were getting food, and they were getting to stretch their legs once they hit Canadian soil, even though they weren't kind of through the customs clearing process. And that's a really important thing for us when we're flying puppies, to know that they are being well cared for kind of throughout and checked on throughout that journey. They're not just, this is very precious cargo, which is also what makes it so costly to bring them across. If they were just a package, it would cost a lot less. But we're very, very grateful for that support from Jane. So
can I just add in too?
Yeah,
we're very fortunate because Vancouver is one of the 2 West Coast cities that flights come into directly from Australia, and so that reduces a lot of the anxiety. I know with current travel, what it is, the risk of baggage being left places is a real concern. With the direct flights, at least we know if the puppies make the flight, they are ending up where they're supposed to go.
Yeah. Not lots of connections. Nobody likes connections. So so with that, let's dive in and talk a little bit. So for those of you that are just joining us, I'm Tara, PADS' communications manager. I'm here with Jackie Clark, who's our breeding manager, puppy program co-manager, and she is raising the lovely little Sawyer. So let's talk about this series that we're going to do with Sawyer. We're going to kind of follow her adventures through puppy raising, and thought it would be really good to kind of get an inside look at what do we tackle with our puppies when they go into puppy raising, because that has changed a lot over the years, and even just during COVID, it has changed even more. And so Jackie, do you want to just talk about what her first few weeks, and then also maybe, so we're going to be touching in for the first few months every month with Jackie. We're going to have her and Sawyer back on Tune In Tuesday for the next few months, and then we'll do quarterly updates as she gets into kind of the period where change maybe doesn't happen quite as rapidly. So let's talk about what the first few weeks, and then maybe what the next month is going to look like for Sawyer.
So I think one of the nice things about us being able to have these conversations is that there are some things that staff do when they're raising dogs, or that volunteers do when they're raising, that they've raised lots of dogs before, that kind of make things easier. And so my hope is that we can help to reassure newer members of our community that, partly some of the things that they're going through are completely normal, and also that it doesn't have to be an everything all at once approach. We feel this great burden when we're raising an assistance dog puppy that isn't ours, to make sure that we're doing everything right and that we're setting the puppy up for success. And there's so much worry that's associated with that in terms of how are they doing in this very moment? And am I setting them up for success? And am I doing enough, or am I doing the wrong things? And so, really, I want to strip it back to, it isn't everything all at once is the very first thing. This is a marathon. It isn't a sprint. And so, generally what we're looking for is, puppy's a little bit more mature, has a little bit more skill next week than they had this week, but it's not a case of, that they have to be perfect. Certainly if she behaved like a 2-year-old service dog right now, I would have real concerns. And, in my experience, the puppies that act like service dogs as puppies tend to not develop into dogs that become service dogs as adults, because we expect that all of the enthusiasm and the impulse control struggles, all of those are going to mellow out with age. So if you have a puppy that starts without those to start with, they just kind of tend to really mellow down as they age, and don't have the oomph that it takes to be a mobility service dog. So with Sawyer, that being kept in mind. Sorry, I think the recycling truck's going to go through here for a sec, but Sue's usually pretty good at tuning it out.
We can't hear it. You're okay.
Okay, wonderful. So there are 3 things that we focus on in puppy raising. We focus on manners, which are manners in the home, but also manners out in the community. We focus on socialization, and we focus on skills, which, kind of in a more traditional language would have been called obedience, but really the dog training world has moved away from obedience. And so it's more about, what skills does the dog have as a individual. So, when we first bring a puppy home, from the manners perspective, we want to limit the choices that the puppy can make so that they are most likely to make good choices. And then we can build on those good choices. So if you imagine them kind of, the brain being full of tunnels at this point, they have tons of neural pathways. Each one is kind of equally likely to be chosen as another. We want to make some tunnels way more rewarding than others. So for instance, laying here on the bed, I am just paying her periodically to her bed for choosing to lay here on the bed. She could be, at the end of the leash trying to play tug, and I'm trying to manage her while I'm trying to interact with all of you. And instead, we are making being here on the bed the most appealing thing for her to do. I'm just going to get up for a quick second, so will she, but I just want to kind of give you a look around to give you an idea in terms of management. So I have a pen set up in the corner for when I can't watch her. And then we discovered when we had Franny home that having access to the living room was problematic because, again, climbing on the coffee table is just as kind of likely a tunnel to choose as, not jumping on the coffee table. So we've got a barricade set up over there. And then we have a barricade set up on this side. We have a permanent stair gate here, but you can also get temporary stair gates. And then as you look down the hall, all of the doors are closed so that she doesn't really have the opportunity to say, I'm going to make really poor decisions. As we were just about to log on, I was laughing with Tara because I was securing a piece of spare fencing to our stairs because Sawyer has discovered that she can sneak through the banisters and then people are going to chase her, which is incredibly reinforcing. And so we've had to limit the opportunity to practice that. So that's the first thing with manners, is just limiting their choices so that they don't rehearse bad behaviors, because the behaviors that they find reinforcing are going to get repeated. So if I can kind of channel her towards really good choices, that sets us up for success kind of for the foreseeable future. If she's never discovered that she can put her feet on the counter, we don't have to then go back and address a counter surfing issue. If she hasn't learned to go into the kids' rooms and steal things, we don't have to go back and kind of untrain that. And it's quite amazing that, even just by the use of gates, if you use gates for a prolonged period of time, and we're talking months, but you use them for months, then you take them away, the dogs tend not to cross that threshold. So it's not a case of the gate being really significant to them. It's just that it really defines kind of what's part of their role. So that covers the management piece. And or the manners piece. And are you happy for me to press on, or do you want me to pause there?
We do have one question that came in while you were talking about that, and that I think relates back to what you were saying in terms of management. And even when you have Franny there, is, do you think puppies in training benefit from being raised with other dogs in the household, or is it easier, more in tune with their later career, that they be raised on their own?
So I think that they can be successful either way. I think it's in how it's set up. So we do have another dog, Nav. She is currently locked in the bedroom because trying to manage both of them during this would be a little bit of an undertaking. And so with other dogs in the household, it can set our puppies up for success as long as they're learning that other dogs being around doesn't just mean a free-for-all. So if they're learning, you know, having another dog around means I can settle on my bed here and Nav settles on her bed here, which will be kind of a lesson that we start working on down the road. That is fantastic training. But if they learn, oh my goodness, as soon as we get home from, if she learns, as soon as we get home from an outing and Nav comes out of the bedroom, it's party city, and now anything Jackie says doesn't matter to me, that's going to move her away from the goal. So it's really in how we set it up and how we manage it. And it's also at this age about how appropriate the play is of the other dog. You know, puppies are really easily overwhelmed, and it doesn't take more than one bad experience for them to form a lifelong association. And so we want to play with other dogs that is really gentle, and that the puppy has chances to leave that play if they want to. Good girl.
All right. So for those of you that are just watching, if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the comment section and we will try and address them. But I'm just going to let Jackie press on and talk about what she's prioritizing in the coming month until we check in with all of you next with Sawyer. So what are some of the first lessons that you tackle with puppies in training?
So with puppies in training, I mean, the first thing for me is if I see anything from a socialization standpoint at this point that I'm worried about, I'm going to start addressing that first. And when I say I'm going to start addressing that, I don't mean that I'm going to put them into the situation that they are struggling in. I just mean that I'm going to start building the skills so that they have them to tackle those concepts. So for Sawyer, very spicy puppy. She climbs fences. However, almost every set of stairs we ran into in the first week, she went, I just can't do this. And so with that, the temptation would be to say, okay, we're going to find tons of stairs. We're going to drill out stairs. We're going to work it. But what ends up happening then is that we keep putting the puppy in really hard situations and asking hard things of them. And it can actually act the other way, where instead of them getting more and more ease at stairs, they start to get more and more apprehensive as we approach stairs, because they know the pressure is going to come up and we're going to ask them to do something that they aren't comfortable with. So instead of focusing on stairs, in those cases, you know, she's little, so I would pick her up, I would carry her to like the top 2 stairs and let her do the top 2 stairs, and then we'd have a bit of a party, or carry her down the stairs, let her do the bottom 2 stairs, and we'd have a party. And then next time she saw that staircase, it was probably going to be fine. But you know, I also did some things like putting a baby gate down on the floor just as she was playing around and saw what happened, and she would consistently avoid the stepping on the baby gate. So to me, that says, okay, so there's something with stairs, there's something with surfaces underfoot. And so then we're just going to focus on exposing her in a really positive way to lots of different surfaces, and having that be reinforcing for her, rather than saying we're only going to expose you to the things that are really difficult. So from a socialization point of view, that's what we're tackling. And also just small outings where she notices the world. So it's not about, you know, I want to get her downtown on the Sky Train the first month that I have her. You know, the first couple of days as we're settling in, we're a couple little walks around the block. Not a lot of treats. I'm just letting her notice what's going on. And if there's anything that she says, I'm a little bit apprehensive about that, then we're going to pause at a comfortable distance. We're going to observe it. And when she says, yeah, you know what, it's okay, and she comes back to me, I'm going to feed her back with me. So I'm never going to associate the food with that scary thing. Not her, but Franny decided the first time she saw a fire hydrant, she was like, oh, that's just not happening. And so she was kind of reclining her body backwards. And so we just let her explore it at that distance that she was comfortable. As soon as she came back, gave her some treats, and we moved on. And the next time we saw a fire hydrant, she was just right up to it, and it wasn't an issue because we hadn't made there be additional conflict around it. So that's kind of what we're looking at for socialization, and then just small outings into stores and whatnot. And then from a skills perspective, we really want to start building in calm. And calm tends to be something that people just assume that assistance dogs come kind of genetically pre-wired to be calm, which is not really what happens, because we need there to be a certain level of excitement and drive in order to do the work. So there's definitely that excitement piece in there, but we need them to be able to kind of proceed through the world fairly calmly. And so, we're teaching that through things like, as I'm sitting here and I'm gesticulating and talking, we are staying calm and the food's just coming to the bed. We also work on it. I haven't started this with her, but we work on an exercise with puppies in training called It's Your Choice. And basically we'll have a fistful of food that we show them, and they can mug it and all they want. But what we're trying to teach them is it's actually that taking that thoughtful step back that opens the hand and gives you access to the food, so that they're starting to learn just that little bit of, yes, good girl. So as long as she's ignoring the hand, I'm going to feed her from it. And then if she tries to mug into my hand, I'm just going to close it again. But she's learning that little bit of control and calmness. So it's not about biting at my hand and raking at my hand. It's really about showing me that calmness that's going to yield those kibbles. Oh, you learned that very quickly. Good girl. And so, things like that are what I'm working with her. And then, just some little very basic skills. So can you follow a lure? And so we teach a lot with luring. So having a piece of kibble and having the puppy follow it. Let's not make you drag around that big cliche. And so I'm just going to put it in between my two fingers and hold it with my thumb. And then we just want to make sure that she follows it like a magnet. I know you can get up. Yeah, you can do it. You're so tired now. Come on. She's like, my bed is very reinforcing, which is actually what we're aiming for. Come on. Okay, I'm going to move it. Yeah, there you go. So just getting her to follow that lure, and then I can pay her as she goes. But then I can use that to build skills like putting 2 feet up on things. And later on, we'll use it for things like light switches and buttons. And all of that just comes from being able to stick your face in somebody's hand and follow a lure around. Good girl. And then we just start working on some of the mechanics for our sits and our stands at this point, but we're not trying to get it on cue. It's not something that we're rushing through. I would rather that she have the mechanics down really well than that we try and rush and put it on cue and we have kind of a sloppy foundation behavior. Okay. So that's kind of what we're working on.
Excellent. Okay, so we have a few questions that have come in since you've been chatting. So one was asking about what are good kind of moderate value treats for this kind of training that you're doing with your puppy?
I pretty close to exclusively use the puppy's kibble. And the reason is labs are super food motivated, and whether or not she'll take the food tells me a lot about where her arousal level is. So arousal can be stress or it can be excitement, but it's that kind of change in energy level. And so, if she tells me she just can't work for the low value food, that's telling me that I'm putting her in too challenging a situation. So I want to take her out of that situation and really pare it down into those small little increments that are easy to do. If she's really snatching at the food, then that's also telling me that she's kind of out of whack emotionally. And so I tend to limit myself almost exclusively to kibble.
I think too, one of the things that you were talking about, kind of like snatching at food, like often some of the things that we notice, it really helps us to kind of know what a dog's emotional state is by how they're taking food or not taking food. It was really interesting to, I mean, you talk about how you're building value for the bed and just how reluctant. The other thing I found interesting, I don't know if anybody noticed when you got up to give us kind of the tour, it was quite a while before Sawyer got off the bed to kind of investigate what you were doing. She stayed there for quite a while, and it was only after a fair chunk of time that she was like, okay, I'm not getting reinforced here anymore. Maybe the treats are over there now, that she kind of followed you around. And I think that's you know, an easy thing to miss, but also an important thing to notice is that, you know, that reinforcement history has a lot of power in it. And, you know, often we get people asking us like, you know, oh, you know, I'm trying to teach my puppy to sit and they just keep jumping. And, you know, I think it's one of those things of, we used to say, you know, we pay the boring dog, as opposed to bringing out the treats when the dog is being maybe a little more unruly. So for those of you watching, you'll notice that Jackie's been very consistently rewarding this puppy for really doing a lot of nothing, which is exactly what we want, right? So.
And the bed is, I think, really something that Heather Kidd has really introduced and pushed over the past maybe 3 years as a real foundation behavior. And the reason that it's so important is that she learns, you know, as you said, she learned very quickly. This is where the value is, even as I'm moving around. There are going to be lots of times over the course of puppy raising where I'm going to get up to get a cup of tea, let's say, and I don't want her to get up from where I am and move with me. And so having that value for her bed and thinking like, oh no, I'm just suctioned here until you ask me to do something else, is going to be really valuable. And also really valuable because these dogs have a tendency to determine that our presence and access to us is so important. And so we don't tend to see a lot of true separation anxiety where we leave the house and the dogs have problems. We see a lot of behaviors where if the dog doesn't have access to us, we see distress. So, you know, you go to the bathroom, you close the door and the dog's on the other side and they're crying and they're scratching. You know, dogs are in kennels in another room and you're working and they don't have access. And so this, you know, my bed has a ton of value and I love it and I'm happy staying here, is a huge skill. And then even things like, you know, somebody comes to the door, the doorbell rings, we can teach the puppies, that's a cue to then go to your bed. And they love their beds. It's so highly reinforced by that point that there is nothing bad about going to their bed. And yet it alleviates that problem about what about dogs that run at the door and jump at guests? Or what about dogs that bark at the door? You know, they have a very clear behavior to perform instead. So it seems like such a simple, you know, kind of throwaway behavior, but, you know, it really is kind of one of the cornerstones that we build the program around. And, you know, when I was on my computer earlier, she was thinking, maybe I want to chew on the rungs of the chair that Jackie's on. Well, if I can have tons of value in her bed instead and know that she's going to stay there and I can put, you know, Nylabones on there and I can put stuffies on there that she's allowed to have, all of a sudden I don't have a problem with her chewing my chair anymore because she's exactly where I want her to be and she's rehearsing good behaviors rather than rehearsing bad behaviors.
So Kimberly is asking a question. Is it possible to train that sticking to their bed behavior in an older dog as well, or just in puppies?
Oh no, absolutely. Puppies learn, really young puppies learn everything way faster, which I mean can also be they learn bad things way faster and scary things way faster. But definitely with adult dogs, they are more than capable of learning this. Nav, I don't think I started working on this with Nav until she was 10 or 11 or 12 months old. And she loves her bed now. And yeah, it's fantastic. I can send her to it across the room and she runs across the room and kind of hits it in a slide because she's so excited to get on her bed. So, you know, for dogs that tend to be, you know, I really want to be close to you, to be able to be like, no, but we can put value in something else is really good.
I think you and I talked about something recently that I also want to point out that I think that that bed piece kind of feeds into is, I'm currently raising a puppy, not a PADS puppy, but it's that element of rest as well, like the dog learning that they don't have to move every time you move. And I've really seen the value of that in terms of like his bucket being empty, like in terms of just feeling really like, well, is him getting enough rest and sleep. And so now that he's not moving every time I get out of my chair, he's doing kind of better with like the world in general, because he's actually getting the rest he needs. So I can you talk a little bit about the importance of rest for puppies? Because that's something that I think I didn't really think about until more recently. I knew that puppies need a lot of rest, but I didn't really think about the importance of that in terms of their outlook on the world.
Absolutely. So puppies this age should be sleeping about 75% of the time, which seems huge. But then you think of how much growing they're going to do in a very short period of time. And not only physical growth, but kind of behavioral, mental growth as well. And so, you know, there's kind of three kinds of rest. There's what we're working on now, which is just calmness. There's, you know, kind of passive calming, where we're actually giving them something to help calm themselves down. So like a licky mat. For our little babies, we give them yak milk chews, that sort of thing. They're Nyla bones. And then there's real active rest. And active rest is like, there are no other choices that can be made except for rest. And so you don't need to be super aware of what I'm doing. You know, it's not always a question of, you know, is this important to me? And so right now with her, we've been working on, you know, kind of just calm. Once we're done with this, I'm probably going to put her in the bedroom in her kennel so that she can actually truly fall asleep. And she'll probably have a 3 to 4 hour nap at that point. And I want her to be able to learn to access that like true, deep, shut off sleep where, you know, she's not aware because I might be getting up and it might be time for food. It's just, there's no chance of food. There's no chance of interaction. It's really just time to sleep now. And then we tend to see so many behavior problems decrease. You know, a lot of the behavior problems that are associated with puppyhood, like the puppy biting. And so I'm not talking about chewing the furniture and stuff, but like the puppy coming at you and biting you, you know, like a little piranha, you know, zoomies, where they kind of just run around without any real purpose. A lot of that is really overtired behavior. And when we see them getting really good sleep, we don't tend to see that as much anymore. And so they're just in a much better headspace when they're awake for learning. And overall, just kind of way more settled. And, you know, it's intuitive for little puppies that they need a ton of sleep, where we'll probably come back to it, but where it's really underestimated often is with the adolescent dogs, because usually they look physically mature at that point. They have adult bodies. And yet, I was listening to a podcast once with a physiologist, and they were saying, you know, when the brain is growing, the body only has so much energy to give. And so if the brain is growing, the body literally has the energy to give to power the brain. So if you've ever seen teenage boys that, you know, they come home from school and they kind of fall head first onto the couch and they fall asleep for 2 or 3 hours, you know, that's a case of their body has nothing left to give. Like all of that energy is needed for brain development and brain growth. So we tend to see sometimes when behavior is problematic with our teenage dogs, that it's actually that they're also not achieving that really good active rest during the day. And we just need to put them in their kennel for 2 or 3 hours and kind of take away any choice and have them have deep sleep. And all of a sudden those behavior struggles kind of melt away.
Yeah, I have found it so powerful. Like even things like behaviorally, like you're talking about like the biting and things, but even just like, I was noticing that like late in the day, the puppy was like barking at noises that normally they wouldn't be barking at, but when they get enough rest, that barking just disappears. So I'm not having to train out, air quotes, a problem behavior. I'm simply making sure the dog is kind of getting what they need in order to just kind of be in a good kind of headspace. And you think about people too, when we're overtired or we're stressed, that we're more likely maybe to be short or frustrated with the people around us or situations that are around us. So it's all super fascinating. Thank you, Jackie. I'm looking at the time and I do not know how it flew by this fast, but we're actually well over. But if anybody has any last minute burning questions, oh, Claylee is asking, how old is Sawyer right now?
Sawyer's 13 and a half weeks right now.
Yeah.
It's a tiny little thing.
Tiny little thing. We laughed because yes, she's 13 and a half weeks and she's smaller than a lot of our 8-week-old puppies. But puppies grow at different rates and it doesn't necessarily predict how big she's going to be as an adult. So thank you everyone for joining us. Sorry, go ahead, Jackie.
I was just going to say, if people are interested in the black and tan coloration, you can Google guiding eyes for the blind, black and tan Labradors, and they actually did a whole article on the genetics that are behind the black and tan coloration. And then I also think we didn't mention that Sawyer is 3/4 lab and 1/4 golden retriever.
Nice. So I'm actually going to post, because I actually have that bookmarked because the question comes up so often. So I'm just going to throw it into the comment section. If people want to go and read it, they can. And one of the things about I'm going to make you talk about for a second, because I was explaining to our comms team that there's a goody, which is like the marking pattern where they get the eyebrows and kind of the chest and the feet and often kind of the blaze under their bum and up the inside of their tail. But then we sometimes see that agouti paired with brindling, which is less common, or we see the brindle on its own. And Sawyer is one of those rare combinations where we have it together. So it's actually kind of two different genes, correct, Jackie? Like the black
two different genes. So, you know, traditionally we would have said there are two color genes in labs. There's the B gene, which governs chocolate, and there's the E gene, which governs yellow. But in reality, there's at least 4 genes in labs that affect color. And so sorry?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So the brindle and black and tan genes are housed on K and A, I believe. And so if you have a yellow dog, the yellow masks it, and so you don't tend to see yellow brindle dogs. But if you have a black dog, then there is the chance that they can express it, and it can be, you know, just from a couple toes all the way up to quite dramatic markings. Sawyer's kind of in between. Some puppies have really dramatic eyebrows and a really dramatic chest patch and cheek patches. And golden retrievers quite often carry it as well, and it's masked because they're golden, and so you don't see it. But when you crossbreed a lab and a golden retriever, it's not uncommon to see the brindle come out because both parents could be carrying it, and it's just, we didn't know it was there because it was recessive. So we can test for it, but we're not really picky about color, so we don't spend donor dollars on color testing dogs.
On trying to figure it out. I do think that it's something we think it's beautiful, and certainly a lot of the reason folks don't see it commonly in Labrador breeders is that the most frequent comment I got when I was raising a black and tan puppy was, oh, is it a lab Rottie cross? And so most Labrador breeders breed away from it because it gives the impression that the dog is not purebred, which in our case, sometimes they aren't. Sometimes they're lab Goldens, but they're certainly, in our cases, not crossed with Dobermans or Rotties or things that are more commonly with that kind of agouti marking. So we just had a question of, before we sign off, can we bring Sawyer up and close to the camera so that people can see the markings, because it's a little bit hard to see from farther away. And then someone is also asking where the other puppy is. So where is Franny? Is she local?
Franny is with puppy raisers in the West Coast region.
Okay.
I'm hoping her feet are in the shot right now.
Yeah, we see her feet right now, and a little bit of her chest. So if you lower her, then we can see her.
So you can see she doesn't have a lot on her face. She's got little tiny eyebrow patches, and then, kind of some flecking in here and under her chin. And it may completely change when she's an adult. Not to say that she won't be brindle, but to say that how much it's expressed could vary. So she could get more dramatic markings as she grows up, or she could just stay the same, tired face. Just like,
it
this is a lot of work. And, I think if I can end on something, about training Calm, like it may seem like she just lay on a bed. She didn't work very hard, but I don't know if you noticed at the end, but I would lead her off and then wait for her to make the choice of, did she get back on the bed? And she would go, oh wait, no, it's on the bed, right? And so, her brain's working the whole time, even though we're working on Calm. So it's not about tiring her, taking her out, running her and tiring her out. It's really that mental work is quite exhausting. And so, it can't be discounted that, like, yeah, Calm can be a lot of work. And just like for some of us, Calm can be a lot of work to kind of, get into that state and maintain that state. Oh, what a good girl.
So I'm gonna just wrap up by closing. We're really excited. In a couple of weeks here, we're gonna have Dave and Jasper, who are one of our lovely client teams. Jasper is a beautiful black lab from our parks litter, and they've been matched for several years, and Dave is just one of our favorite people. So we're super excited to have them come on our next Tune In Tuesday, which is coming up on the 27th. And then Jackie and Sawyer will be back with us next month, and we'll have a little update on how Sawyer's doing and what she's working on kind of at the next stage of the journey. So with that, I do want to close by saying sometimes people ask how they can help PADS. One of the things you can do to help is share out these live videos, because I think it's one of the ways that we educate people about our program, how we train our dogs, but also our need for funding and donations. And thank you again to Jane for her support in getting Sawyer here and Franny here. Thank you, thank you. And the other two puppies who are still kind of yet to come. And so, yeah, and also we are still needing puppy raisers. So if you want to share this post out with a little bit about what puppy raising is about, and just tell folks that if they're interested in volunteering, to go to pads.ca/volunteer, and you can learn more about what's involved with puppy raising. We are still actively recruiting puppy raisers in our West Coast region, and we are going to be putting an announcement up later today. We welcomed 4 new litters over the last week, including a record-breaking litter for us of 13 puppies. And so it has been a very, very busy time, but we're just working on kind of getting that content up to share with all of you. But those puppies are going to need raisers in about 8 weeks. So if you've ever thought about it, now is a really good time to check it out and kind of start the onboarding process. And huge thank you, Meredith, from our comms team, who has just posted those links in the comment section. So if you're watching this now or after the fact, if you go into the comments, you'll see the links to the various pages to donate or to volunteer if you are interested. So thank you, Jackie and Sawyer, for joining us. I know that you have not been feeling particularly well this week, so we appreciate you coming back into action in order to kind of share this lovely little lady with us. And we will see you next month for part 2 of Sawyer's adventures. So thanks, Jackie.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.